society. They inform people about what is happening. It permeates people's lives by creating their own criteria and opinions. In this way, the media moves the masses, creating different social movements.
For over 60 years, the people of Ambazonia were deprived of such privileges. The privilege to enhance their own criteria and opinion. They have suffered cultural genocide for 6 long decades, but not in this age and not with undaunted ABC Amber News on board.
You must understand that war...
Good evening, fellow Ambazonians, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to this very special broadcast, State of the Liberation Movement, with the Secretary of State for Communications and IT, Martin Mungwa, PhD, FSCC. I want to encourage everybody watching on Facebook and on YouTube to ensure that you invite somebody to join this very special broadcast. The SOS will definitely be taking questions on top of the hour. And the discussion of tonight is quite pertinent. It is captioned France and French in opinions in Ambazonia. In other words, the involvement of whatever is called Francafrique in southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. We understand that our nation was a former British trusteeship territory, and the question of our liberation movement baffles the mind of scholars. How, what procedures and methods or legality qualifies that we as a people will suddenly be under a French mandate of recolonization? I'm talking about annexation. We are an annexed people, and by an aggressive method, we have decided to restore our independence. And it's important that the spokesperson for the government of Ambazonia, I'm talking about the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, headed by President Sako, always comes to investigate, to look into some of these issues, to scrutinize them with a lens of his intellectual capacity and with the great wisdom of the peoples of Ambazonia. Today, we're going to talk very extensively on this issue and related issues that are happening in Yaoundé as far as our liberation movement is concerned. We will also talk about the negotiations, the Swiss negotiations, the process. We have individuals like Akuru criticizing or claiming that it is a sleeping pill. I don't understand. I choose to debate or argue that opinion. How is it a sleeping pill? He has no justification for it. I can tell you that with no fear of contradiction. But then the SOS will be telling us at what point we are with the Swiss-led process and the negotiations. What we as Ambazonians need to know as we are looking up to that negotiation. There's also a very important announcement that we made this evening by the SOS. There are some restructuring or reprogramming for the interim government is doing to ensure that the people are equitably informed as per the state of the liberation movement. Right after this break, we will be listening to Dr. Martin Mungwa. He is very seated in his office and waiting. Stay tuned.
The media greatly influences society. They inform people about what is happening. It permeates people's lives by creating their own criteria and opinions. In this way, the media moves the masses, creating different social movements.
For over 60 years, the people of Ambazonia were deprived of such privileges. The privilege to enhance their own criteria and opinion. They have suffered cultural genocide for 6 long decades, but not in this age and not with undaunted ABC Amber News on board.
You must understand that wars are fought and won in the media. The speed of the revolution and Ambazonia's quest for freedom cannot be explained without highlighting the diligent use of the media.
Franco-Cameroon colonizers, among other strategic moves, weaponized the media against Ambazonia for so long, and they continue to do so even today. The question would be, how much do the oppressed people of Ambazonia need to counter the media rage?
Indeed, how much more is required to stop the genocide? The current carnage in Amazonia didn't start today. In 1961, 1972, 1984, 1992, Amazonians were slaughtered in huge numbers and help was not forthcoming. Why? Because the oppressor was the piper in the media.
The good news is we have what it takes to dictate the pace.
Right now, ABC Amber TV is taking advantage of the wonders of multimedia aggressively
to inform the misinformed and disinformed with undaunted and other revolutionary programs bringing it to the news untold stories.
Most importantly, to win the media war by taking ABC Amber TV into every multimedia platform.
In a word, where the importance of storytelling can never be overemphasized, Amazonians has to tell her own story, not the other way round.
And like we say it always, Amazonia must narrate her story accurately. We can do this together, you know, right? You are just a click away. Visit our website at www.abcambertv.com, and the steps are quite simple.
With just a click on the website, you can become a club member with so many benefits.
You can also make a one-time donation, advertise and showcase your goods and services at the marketplace on the website.
That was easy, right? You're welcome on board.
And thank you for opting for the winning team.
Global greetings to all Ambazonians and the international community. Also, a 21 gun salute to all our restoration forces. Today, I'm going to talk about essentially two topics. France and French opinions in Ambazonia, and some of the things we need to know as we gear towards a negotiated settlement. Dear Ambazonians and the international community, in the course of human history, a people can face oppression, domination, assimilation, and genocide in the hands of a predator or wicked neighbor. By a people, we mean a group of human beings created in the image of God, with natural rights and recognized by the United Nations Charter as a group possessing its own territory by birth, possessing the right to self-government and to pursue economic development in peace and happiness. When faced with oppression from a neighbor, it makes sense for the people as victims to reflect on how the neighbor sees its victims or can justify such aggression. When such a wicked neighbor publicly admits wrongdoing but offers no apology, that means there is no intent whatsoever to mend evil doing. It also means the crime committed by the predatory neighbor has been well planned beforehand. The predator can be part of a conspiracy involving others. Their intention is to grab what belongs to the victim without mercy, driven by mistaken sense of self-importance, self-grandeur, and impunity. Such is the situation we, as the people of the former British Southern Cameroons of Ambazonians, face today in relation to the occupation of our country since 1961. We must always take a moment to think of and thank our gallant volunteers in the Ambazonia Restoration and Self-Defense Forces for rising up. They began this difficult journey with sticks, stones, rubber guns in self-defense against a conventional army pumped up with combat experience, tanks, armored cars, and machine guns from Serbia and metropolitan France. But for their great efforts, with countless terminal blood sacrifices, we, the NOSO colony, as the French Cameroon middle class likes to refer to us, would have been wiped out. Fellow Ambazonians, today and for the following weeks, we would like to start focusing on the specific deeds of French Cameroon, which affirm, for all intent and purposes, to all of us in Ambazonia, that we are indeed different from the Central Africans of Cameroon, to which the General Assembly of the United Nations on April 21st, 1961, acting on an abundance of goodwill towards pleading by genuine West African leaders not to create many microstates on our continent, voted to establish a federation in the Cameroons under the guarantorship of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. The federation failed at inception, primarily because the then leader of French Cameroon, Amadou Ahidjo, sought to confront Great Britain at the International Court of Justice in May 1960 lawsuit, instead of a Lancaster House meeting in London, to agree modalities for the federation sought by the United Nations and West African powers. Fellow Ambazonians, your interim government has mapped out the admissions of French Cameroon leaders, starting with President Ahidjo, to the United Nations in the 1959 to 1961 timeframe. Amadou Ahidjo agreement with Premier Django Foncha in Douala about an equitable federation of equals, and more recently, Mr. Paul Biya's distorted narrative on the genesis of the struggle for sovereign statehood in Ambazonia. Speaking at the Paris Peace Forum on November 12, 2009, Mr. Biya sought to misrepresent our struggle to restore independence. He went completely off the agenda of the Paris Peace Forum, which was for think tanks, companies, governments from around the world to think, define the challenges and solutions to global problems. President Paul Biya of French Cameroon, who attended this conference, was interviewed by the Sudanese billionaire Mo Ibrahim. Here is what Mr. Biya said about the War of Independence Restoration in Ambazonia. My country is complex. We were first a German colony. After the First World War, Germany lost its colonies, which were shared between Great Britain and France. And my country was divided. Some were under British colonization and others under French colonization. The result has been a juxtaposition of culture and civilization that makes things quite different. President Biya completely runs away from the root causes of the conflict, some of which he personally created as a trade-off to France to stay in power for life. Ambazonians have a common colonial and cultural heritage stemming from its long-standing trade with Great Britain from 1850 to 1884 and from 1916 to 1961. These distinct historical periods were impactful and rendered the brief German occupation of both territories from 1884 to 1914 insignificant. Let us briefly go through the first two root causes involving Mr. Biya's direct involvement. Problem number one, the assimilationist project. The doctrine of the assimilationist project is admitted by Le Monde newspaper, published in Paris on January 24th, 2017. The journal hits the nail on its head by stating very clearly that the matter at issue concerns long-standing efforts by the French-speaking and French-dominated governments of Ahidjo and Paul Biya in Yaoundé to annihilate the Anglo-Saxon cultural heritage in the southern Cameroons by replacing English with French through decrees and administrative measures. That is only the tip of the pineapple. The real objective is to penetrate the body of the pineapple for juices, all accomplished by corruption and not by the express consent by the people. The presidency of France, and not the French people themselves, is a conspirator. Both France and Cameroon seek to subject the people of Ambazonia to the controversial cooperation accords signed on the 26th of December 1959 between Amadou Ahidjo for French Cameroon and Charles de Gaulle for France. France currently confiscates between 50 to 80% of the foreign earnings of Ambazonia, despite absence of a treaty of union with proxy French-speaking Cameroon or any other instrument with Ambazonian leaders authorizing such expropriation. That is how France behaves since 1826 in Haiti, and was chased out of Vietnam in 1954 by Vietnamese nationalist Ho Chi Minh. Problem number 2. The rise of La République du Cameroun. Following the birth of the Federation with Ambazonia on October 1st, 1961, the cooperation treaty between France and French Cameroon meant that France lacked the authority and access to the federal state of West Cameroon. We all remember what happened in West Cameroon, that the president of Cameroon authorized Hervé Aquitaine to begin prospecting oil offshore our country without informing our state parliament in Boya was abnormal. After oil was struck offshore in Diane, President Ahidjo had the courage to sack an elected prime minister, Honorable Augustin Gomjoa, and install his lapdog Solomon Tandang Muna on January the 11th, 1968 in office. The reticent people of southern Cameroon did not protest, did not sound an alarm, but did not forget the unfolding pattern of bad governance. Then, in 1972, our cherished federation was destroyed in a yes or we dubious referendum. The sole purpose was ostensibly to destroy the regional autonomy enjoyed by the West Cameroon state. The move granted unfettered access to France for the first time to begin proper exploitation of the Ambazonian people and resources. 50 years after that terrible day, the wastes in the land is here for all to see. As a people, cognizant of our collective right to self-determination, this interim government demands that France respects the international law. France respects international law. We demand that France acts under provisions of our 1959 cooperation treaty with Cameroon to determine the proper political orientation for that country. We in Ambazonia are resolute, have no ambition towards Cameroon territory, and will self-defend vigorously against French Cameroon until justice is done. Now, let me talk about the negotiating process. This is very important for Ambazonians to actually understand when they talk about negotiations and what does it entail. This is an inevitable process in a liberation movement, which must end at the table. And for this to happen, partners are involved. We have the international community in collaboration with the interim government. We have to make sure that people buy into this process, because from lessons learned, because this is not the first time that a liberation movement has ended on the negotiating table. So we want to let Amazonians understand the various stages that are involved in any negotiation. There are two principal stages. You have the facilitation and you have the mediation. Facilitation is simply the process of bringing people together. And once a person has been endorsed by the parties, that person is considered the mediator. And that's when mediation starts. We also have to understand that in the course of mediation, facilitation will involve training, making both parties understand exactly what needs to be done and what will lead to a good negotiation. Many people have been asking, so why can't we force La République to come to the table? In fact, that's something that we really have to understand. The facilitator or the mediator must be neutral. He cannot be a policeman or a bully, because if that's the case, one party may leave the table. So it is very important that when you're a neutral person, you have to be fair on both sides. A mediator is not a policeman, it's not a bully. So once all that has been achieved, people have been trained and they actually understand how to go through that process. Ultimately, you are going to have what you call a comprehensive settlement. A comprehensive settlement can only be guaranteed, can only be effective. We will have guarantors to help in implementation, which means that they have to understand the process. The process has to be very understand the process and how they have to be implemented. Therefore, so the idea was to create a platform starting on Friday afternoon. And I'll be coming on board with the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, Dr. Ellard, to start talking to Amazonian people about this negotiation process. Or pre-negotiation, so that we know exactly what it entails for people to ask questions. We hope, over the course of time, we're going to invite some people who have expertise in negotiation for them to talk to you or talk to us about the negotiation process and what needs to be done. What do we have to know? Because it is important that Amazonians buy into this negotiation process. So this is what I wanted to talk to you about, so that starting next Friday, we are going to have this talk to the Amazonian people so that we can start educating our people on how negotiations are carried out. And as I said, Dr. Ellard will be here in order to facilitate this process, at least in terms of education, because he has a lot of experience, what he's gone through since this negotiation started, at least the pre-negotiation process up to now. Short live the struggle, long live the Federal Republic of Amazonia. Thank you, and over to you.
Yeah, that's amazing right there. The discussion has quite been elaborate. I'm very interested on the subject of negotiation. That's what every Amazonian is looking forward to. If you see the eagerness and enthusiasm Amazonians are demonstrating towards the negotiating or negotiation process, tells you Amazonians want the war to end. And they want it to end with them being a determinant force, like you've rightfully placed. So I'm not in any way attempting to start from bottom top. You've always had a keen eye on French maneuver or mafia in Amazonia, and that was a premium of your discussion tonight. I'd like us to elaborate a little bit more about it. But first of all, perhaps we would want to watch a video that has to do with Francafrique in Africa. It's an instrumental report. And after this report, we'll do a comparison of your statement for tonight and Amazonia for today and the future of France in Africa and the future of Amazonia with France. Stay tuned, just a moment.
France-Afrique, literally meaning France in Africa melded into one term, refers to France's powerful, inseparable synergy with its former empire in the African continent. It revolves around political and economic patronage, as well as military cooperation. For decades, the doctrine allowed the French to maintain their grip on Africa, affecting its former colonies to the nucleus, while being invisible to the naked eye. I'm your host Shivan, and welcome to Caspian Report. Power doesn't corrupt. Rather, power inevitably attracts the corrupted. As African colonies declared political independence and broke away from their European overlords, the experience of French and British colonies were thoroughly different. Many of the British colonies gained independence through violence and thereby severed ties with London. Most of the French colonies, however, detached through non-violent ways but retained deep-running links with Paris. More precisely, in the 1960s, just before conceding to the African demands for independence, French leaders of the day, most notably Charles de Gaulle, believed that to fulfill France's long-term geopolitical needs, they needed to preserve the privileged political energy and trade arrangement with the former French Empire. In other words, a system of cooperation and compliance was necessary to ensure France's grip on Africa. As such, de Gaulle's administration crafted the CFA franc monetary system, with the CFA being the French acronym for French Colonies of Africa. The bargain gave the 14 newly independent French African colonies a stable and robust currency, but it also legally obliged them to put 50% of their foreign currency reserves into the French treasury, plus another 20% for financial liabilities. That means that the member states of the franc monetary zone only retained entry to 30% of their money, with the currency being printed under the supervision of the French National Bank. The settlement made sure that France's grip on Africa did not cease with the declaration of political independence. Even worse, if the 14 African states wanted to gain access to their own funds, they had to borrow it from the French at fixed commercial rates. This is what happened during the 2008 financial crash, when the CFA franc members could not obtain credit because their reserves were held in the name of France. The situation ended with France extending credit to its former colonies by using their own wealth. Furthermore, immediately after creation, the CFA franc financial system was split in two currencies. The West African CFA franc was designated to 8 West African countries: Mali, Niger, Senegal, Togo, Benin, Burkina Faso, Guinea-Bissau, and the Ivory Coast. Meanwhile, the Central African CFA franc was assigned to the 6 Central African countries: Cameroon, Chad, Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, the Republic of Congo, and the Central African Republic. In truth, both currencies remained effectively interchangeable since they were guaranteed by the French treasury. This arrangement, which has been the case since the 1960s, proved to be a significant boost for French banks and the state, but it deprived the African countries of their wealth and growth. The system of servitude was best captured by former French President Jacques Chirac, who said that we have to be honest and acknowledge that a big part of the money in our banks comes precisely from the exploitation of the African continent. In 2008, he went on to say, without Africa, France would slide down into the rank of a third world power. Lawmakers in Paris brand the CFA zone as a monetary union, but in practice, it is an exercise of neo-colonialism. As long as the former colonies are denied basic political institutions to manage their socio-economic base, their sovereignties and political will are hollow. Today, some 158 million people live in the CFA monetary zone, and since both franc currencies are pegged to the value of the euro, which has been the case since the introduction of the European currency, the local African governments cannot set their own interest rates and thereby devaluate their own currencies. This hurts growth, because the economy of the CFA zone depends almost entirely on the export of unprocessed raw materials with low added value. The inability of the African countries to devaluate the currencies to gain better export prices has come at the expense of GDP growth. Since 1994, economic growth in the franc zone has hovered around 1.5%. Even by African standards, that is poor performance. Some analysts argue that the CFA zone offers low inflation and a stable exchange rate. Although valid to an extent, these advantages are leaning heavily in favor of Paris. Now, this is not to say that the French government is responsible for all the grievances in Africa, but for the African states, it's hard to grow when someone else controls the money supply, let alone the financial regulations, banking activities, and budgetary and economic policies. The franc monetary system breeds corruption, capital flight, and illegal activities. In such a climate, economic development is nearly impossible, as is the creation of a political system that meets the needs of the majority of the citizens, because the governing elite is preoccupied with repatriating wealth acquired legally or otherwise. The farce peaks whenever the French state sends public aid. What happens is that France uses Africa's wealth to extend a line of credit to its former colonies with the condition that the aid money is spent on French equipment, goods, or contracts with French firms. In January 2019, Italian Deputy Prime Minister Luigi Di Maio and leader of the populist Five Star Movement accused his French counterpart of manipulating the economies of the former French colonies in Africa. He blamed France for impoverishing Africa and thereby encouraging migration to Europe. Di Maio wasn't wrong. In 1994, the French government devaluated the CFA currencies by 50%. The idea was that it would improve the economic situation, but it did the opposite. The purchasing power of common citizens dropped sharply, unemployment skyrocketed, and the already fragile economies went bankrupt, leading to an accelerating migration of Africans towards developed countries. The legality of the French monetary system is dubious, but since the African nations cannot afford to file a legal case, the international community leaves it as it is. How much capital the African states lost since the implementation of the monetary system is unknown, but it has robbed the Africans of their wealth and prosperity. With France having nearly absolute control over the economies of its former African colonies, one can think of the CFA monetary zone as the French edition of the petrodollar. And as bad as all this sounds, it gets even worse. French multinational firms retain exclusive rights to purchase or reject any natural resources extracted from the soil of the former French colonies. Crude oil, natural gas, uranium, diamonds, gold, iron, etc. West and Central Africa is rich in raw materials, and French firms such as Avera and Total have first pick. So only with the approval of Paris can the African nations sell their resources at international markets, and French companies reserve the right to buy goods at the cheap, since the Africans cannot devaluate their currencies. It's a foolproof trap. The franc monetary zone has given France a veto over the economic well-being of West and Central Africa. This unchecked neo-colonial policy could not have succeeded were it not for the African governing elites who rely on political, technical, military, and economic support from France. Any leader that disobeys the will of France or tries to leave the franc monetary zone must deal with the consequent political, financial, and military pressure. For instance, in January 1963, President Sylvanus Olympio of Togo was assassinated 3 days before issuing a new currency. Other notable leaders include David Dacko, Thomas Sankara, Maurice Yemego, Hubert Maga, Modibo Keita. All were assassinated or overthrown in coups as a result of their quest for monetary independence. Altogether, France has intervened militarily 40 times across Africa since the 1960s. Meanwhile, loyal African leaders were compensated with lavish lifestyles. In 1994, the ELF scandal revealed precisely how extensive the corrupt rabbit hole was. The oil company Elf offered bribes, mistresses, fine art, real estate, and so on to African politicians in order to secure their allegiance to France and maintain their exclusive rights to the local oil fields. The oil firm also lobbied French political parties to guarantee their support. This reprehensible arrangement explains France's long history of supporting undemocratic but loyal governments. For African dictators, France-Afrique was and still is a form of life insurance. Seen in this light, the doctrine enables the French to pull a lot of strings on the ground, giving lawmakers and businesses in Paris unilateral access to the raw materials in the area. But the world is changing. Since the end of the Cold War, France's hold in Africa has declined. Rising economic competition from China, the United States, and many other nations has plunged the French market share in the continent to historic lows. And with the passing of a new generation of Francophone African leaders, the African youth is increasingly looking for alternative patrons. Yet among all the former European colonial powers, France is unique in its refusal to decolonize. In this spirit, policymakers in Paris are drafting a new arrangement to manage their influence in Africa, with the weapon of choice being the French language. But more on this in the next episode. I've been your host, Shirvan from Caspian Report.
SOS, I know you enjoyed the report, and that's this something. It's a kind of a resume and a review of what you've been talking over the months. I think for about 2 to 3 months now, you have heated on some of these issues so hard.
Absolutely.
Now, just so we have a platform for the discussion already this evening. I want you to just emphasize on some of those things that were said there, as far as the decolonization process with the two colonial powers were concerned, the advantages, the pros and the cons, and how others choose to do post-independence.
Yeah, thank you, Paddy. I think this is an excellent program. I'm seeing this for the first time, but at the same time, I think it sort of captures what we've been talking about since I started talking about this since January. And again, if you look at it, it's a summary of that accord that was signed between Ahijo and de Gaulle in 1959. Which just give it a summary. The critical. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very loud and clear.
Okay. The essential elements are that first, of course, our economy will be handled by France. Second, our political institutions will be dictated by France. Third, our educational system will be dictated by France, principally making sure that everybody speaks French. Fourth, we also talk about this military pact, and of course, keeping 50 to 80% of our hard-earned currency in French banks, which in turn they loan it to us in the name of cooperation. Can you imagine? You come to my house, you take my money, and you turn back, you give it to me as a loan. That is a cooperation loan. I mean, this is ridiculous. And I'm very happy that you are bringing up programs like this for the Amazonians to see exactly what France is doing in Africa. And when you take the particular case of devaluation that took place in 1994, can you imagine you devalue a currency? Normally, in certain places, devaluation can be a good thing, in the sense that when you devalue, but at the same time you have a manufacturing base, then you have a lot of exports of your manufactured goods, which are value added. But in our case, we don't have any manufacturing base. All we have are raw materials, and they make sure that we only depend on raw materials. How can you put any value added, which is the primary product, into all industrial goods? So obviously they will make sure that the raw materials are as cheap as possible so that they can now profit from it. So you see exactly what France has been doing to Amazonia. I mean, I really care less about the rest of Africa because, I mean, this is their fight, but we have our own fight. And I want to let Amazonians understand today, when you have all this Anglophone elite in Yaoundé who are now fighting to poison our ARFs, now they're now having secret meetings with all sorts of voodoo practitioners to come and poison us through money or what sort of, I don't know, what other techniques they have. You really begin to wonder whether they have been able to absorb this information that, you exposed today. And even given the fact that now there is a new breed of young Africans who want to move away from the colonial past, I thought they would take advantage of this situation and climb on the bandwagon and they help their own fellow countrymen to get out of this strangulation, if I can put it that way, by the French. It is very sad. And what is even dramatic about the whole thing, if you look at this our revolution since 2016, 2017, whereas you see an escalation, a gradual improvement of the ARFs, moving from sticks to stones to projectiles, and then to den guns, machine guns, and now they actually have rocket-propelled grenades. But look at the entire country, which it supposedly had also the military training from France. They have been stagnant or they have been dropping. Now they want to go to voodoo. They are going to Ghana, Benin, and India to get voodoo. That's what La République du Cameroon is using to fight Ambazonians. Voodoo. Is that not an embarrassment? They brought in Chadians, they brought in people from the Congo, they brought in people from Niger, they brought in people from Equatorial Guinea to fight us, and we destroyed them. Now they are going for voodoo. Think about it. And I want Ambazonians and the ARFs listening to this presentation. If they are going for voodoo today, what does that mean? They have lost. They've lost the war. And we have to understand this. It is a shame. You have people who only carry titles on them. Chief this, chief that. Because they think they want to have magical power so that they can kill the ARFs. We work with modern technology and we work with our brains. We are a smart people. And I want the ARFs to know that. And our gallant engineers and scientists who've been working behind the scene to look for new methods to create, design weapons to deal with these thugs from La République du Cameroon. And I want every Ambazonian, do not be afraid of La République. Do not. They have nothing to show off for. Over to you, Paddy.
Yeah, it's vital. You're talking about France and French opinions in Amazonia. It's so eminent that in 2016, the teachers will complain of lecturers being francophones, coming to impose a francophone style within an Anglo-Saxon, and it led to what it is today. It so baffles that lawyers complained of French lawyers coming into a common law jurisdiction to function indiscriminately, and it led to what it is today. So could that be part of that involvement, that opinion, that French opinion that they want to impose even as we speak?
Let me go back a little. For those who have been following Cameroon politics, when Biya came to power, during the Agric show, he always said, "Je ne faillirai jamais. I shall never fail." The question is, shall never fail to do what? People never asked. And now when you look back, you realize that this is the plan. He shall never fail to turn us to be francophones. And he had been contemplating. But one thing actually defeated Mr. Biya from the onset. And I'm going to explain it to you. is the same thing that defeated the French during the First World War, during the Second World War. Their inability to have self-confidence in whatever they do. These are people who lack self-confidence. Biya was born a Frenchman. You have to understand this. He was born in 1932 when La République was a French colony. So he's actually coming to us as another Napoleon to beat the British through Anglophone, through Amazonia. That was his mindset. But he was already defeated, because when he thinks back at the embarrassment and the shame that fell on France when the German army defeated them within a couple of hours, he knew that he was not going to succeed. But he had to say it anyway in order to please his French masters. And that's why he kept saying, "Je ne ferai jamais. And après moi, c'est le déluge. After me will be chaos." He knew he was going to set this country into flames, because he knew that we're not going to take it lying down. He knew it. And he knew that we would definitely beat them. But he had one trump card. By the time all that happens, he will be dead and gone. That's why he waited until the twilight of his reign to plunge us into a genocidal war. It is that simple. Up to today, Biya never considers himself somebody from La République. He is a Frenchman. Because when he goes to France, in fact, he may be the only leader who actually met de Gaulle. Even those in power in France, they never saw de Gaulle. How old is Macron? Maybe 41 years old. So he never saw de Gaulle. So Biya is the most French among French people, because he can beat his chest and say, "I sat down with de Gaulle, and these are the instructions that he gave me to make sure that I turn Southern Cameroon into a French colony." Even de Gaulle never believed in it. But he said, "After all, maybe you're Africans. Keep on fighting till maybe one day, they will surrender." This is somebody who was he took refuge in England during the war in order to fight back. Amazonians should understand this history of La République. Biya is a Frenchman. He's a Frenchman trying to at the head of this genocidal war. And he may be thinking that he's Bonaparte, and he's coming to conquer us. But at the same time, he knows he can't make it, but he's been forced. That's been his life insurance, as the gentleman in the presentation said. If he doesn't do it, he would have been killed a long time ago. He had to do it anyway. And that's why we heard about "Après moi, c'est le déluge. And je ne ferai jamais. I shall never fail." Never fail to do what? This is somebody who has not designed, hasn't been able to build a 100-kilometer road during his reign for 40 years. He has been unable to provide clean water and sanitation. Basic things. Not even a driving code. Which means that if he wants to drive a car, he will go to France. That's his home. Like most of his cabinet members, they're all French people. We should not let these people succeed in their diabolic plan. They're psychologically inferior, and they know it.
Now, SOS.
And they know it in deep down. They know what they're doing is wrong. Over to you, Paddy.
Now, SOS. Looking at you just look at there is a paradox in the way France has always expressed their intention in Africa. Jacques Chirac looked at the French people sometime in the mid-90s and told them, listen, without Africa, France is nothing. That could have been misconstrued or misunderstood for some form of compassion or some form of requesting the French population to demonstrate some kind of love or respect for a continent that is 70% enhancing the prosperity of that nation. Let me fast forward. When Macron was voted into office, even when he was campaigning, he identified that French involvement, opinion in Africa, including Amazonia, is illegal. He went to Nigeria, made speeches with youths, came to Nigeria, did the same thing, went to Rwanda, Kenya, toured Africa, and made the same sermon. It was the same crusade. On and on, he keeps saying so. To reassure himself into power, he told the world that they're going to review French policy. But the relationship between Macron and Biya might not be understood. But we do not seem to see any public direct utterance from Oyer, from France, withdrawing their involvement in Amazonia. Isn't that a paradox?
Yeah, you are saying that assuming that the French president is the most powerful person in France. I don't think so. He can go, I mean, it's like politics all over the world. We've all known that politicians will make promises, but after they get power, they bet and switch, they change. In fact, knowing how corrupt French politics is, I don't think I believe an iota of what Macron was saying. He was just trying to please those Africans who may think that France can change without a fight. Look, Chirac said it. Without France, we will be a third world country. What does that mean? It means that without France, we'll not be able to have shelter overhead. Without France, we'll not have food on the table. Without France, we will not be able to have clothes on our body. So somebody
I think he said without Africa.
Pardon?
Without Africa. Chirac said without Africa.
Without Africa, without Africa, they will not be able to have shelter. Without Africa, they will not be able to have food and clothing. Who, under such desperate conditions, will give them away because they love Africa? It's impossible. It's impossible. France is addicted with the free raw materials that they get from Africa. They're addicted. They cannot change. The only way you cure an addiction is what? We have to be able to cure them by fighting for our rights, so that they know that if they don't heal themselves, well, they'll probably have to die. It is not surprising. I mean, anyone who has lived in France and observed French politics, those are the last politicians in Europe to even believe in, because I've lived in France. I know exactly what they do. That is, why would anybody who believes in what a French president will be saying in order to gather, he probably did that in order to win French African votes, so they may think, oh, maybe when he comes to power, he's going to make a difference. Never. We have to understand this. We have to design and direct our future, and in order to do that, we need to have a backbone. That's what we need to have, and that's all is required. And the ARLs have demonstrated that they have a backbone. Freedom has never been free. If you know of any, you let me know. Yesterday, we celebrated Juneteenth in the United States, when slavery ended. They went through a civil war in order to end slavery. They did not end slavery because they really wanted to. But they discovered that the American I mean, American civilization will not be better than what it was at that time if slavery was not stopped. And some people deliberately made sure that slavery got stopped. And it was stopped through a war, a civil war. But remember, even when it stopped, they're still building the society to today. There's still remnants of that slavery around here in America. And that's why we are what we are. Because we've come to America, we've understood the challenges that they went through, and we've seen how they are fighting to make changes. Fighting every day, and everybody has the right to fight. It doesn't matter your background. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. It doesn't matter your religion. Once you are in America and you enjoy the being an American, you have the right to fight. And nobody will stop you from doing it. That's exactly what we are doing. Because this is a free country. Regardless of all the things they talk about America, it is only in America that we can do what we are doing now. And we better take advantage of that knowledge and change Amazonia for good. Let no one be afraid. We will do everything for La Republic to leave our country because it is a right. Over to you, Paddy.
Thank you very much, SOS. The discussion is progressing and making things really interesting. It's getting. I see people are excited. Those watching you on the social media are getting quite excited with this pattern of our talk. Now we will have to make progress in this. When you look at Macron, we hope that we should be having a negotiation with French Cameroon, or should be sitting in Switzerland to talk with French Cameroon while he's still there. When you look at Macron and some of the changes that has happened in France during his reign, he was re-elected because of this confidence that they had for him. When you look at him, do you think that there is any hope that he can facilitate, or as we continue our state of resistance, he can facilitate our negotiation process or French grip over our national territory?
We already have facilitators and we already have a mediator. And the mediator was accepted by both parties. It's just a matter of time for them to come to the table. We've accomplished a major part in this negotiation. We have a facilitator who's been accepted by both parties, and now we have a mediator through the Swiss-led process. Obviously, France is dragging its feet, but he has never said no to the concept. We know they're dragging their feet, but to us, it's totally irrelevant. If you look at what happened to France in Vietnam, they had to be kicked out. In situations like this, it's always one person normally says, I do not agree to it. Another person says, we have to go that way. And it ends up in a fight. The American Revolution, the South said wanted to maintain slavery. The North said, no, we are not going to maintain slavery. There was a fight. Now France says, I'm going to support La République. We are saying, no, we have to take our country back. There is a fight. And whenever there's a fight, at the end of it, there must be settlement. We must end up at the table to talk. And remember, the whole process of sitting at the table to talk and actually reaching an agreement can take years, can take 4 years, can take 5, can take 10 years. Let Amazonians understand this. It doesn't mean that you go, it's not like the grand débat or the whatever dialogue that they had in La République, where they came in 1 week, they came out, everything was written and they was posted. That is not negotiation. It takes much, much longer than that. And I want Amazonians to understand. And please come to the town hall meetings, because we'll be talking about this subject during the town hall meetings, to give opportunities to Ambazonians to ask questions for clarification. Negotiation like this does not take a week, does not even take a month, takes years. If we start talking today, maybe in 4 or 5 years, the negotiations will be finalized and will split and go to a different camps. But it has to start, which means that understanding the conditions, world opinion, other factors that we may not know, France may eventually change its mind. Just like any other atrocity that was created in history. Whether it was the First World War or slave trade or whatever, it must end with a negotiated settlement, because that will ensure long-term peace between the warring parties. We want to have good neighborliness with La République du Cameroon. It is very essential, because we can never change our boundaries. We are not going to move, say, oh no, I want my new neighbor to be Ghana because I don't like La République. No. We'll have to learn to live as neighbors. Be able to work together as two separate countries. Recognize our specificities. That is the point I want to make Ambazonians understand today. And the interim government is doing all it can to make sure that we can go to this negotiating table as soon as possible, so that we can draw the roadmap for this final separation, so we can get guarantors. What was missed in the 60s, because La République went and sued Britain in the International Court of Justice regarding Northern Cameroon. And Britain got angry, and that's why I don't think Ahidjo ever visited Britain. That's one thing that people don't know. I don't know if Ahidjo ever visited Britain. Probably as a result of this case that made the British very angry. And I really hope that France will behave to understand that this is not going to change, and work in such a way that we can also be good friends with France. Doesn't mean that we'll never do business with France. We surely can. But they should respect our sovereignty and our right to self-determination. And we are right, because the international community recognizes that. We are not lying. Yeah. La République is lying about our common past. We traded with Britain for much longer period, even when La République was still, I don't know, maybe under French, or they were just savages. I don't know. So this should be made very clear. And this discussion is important for us to understand what direction we're going to take. And that's why, let me just say a few words here. I've seen people say, oh, representative or the Swiss-led or the mediator is talking to Cho Ayaba, is talking to Bohebe. Of course, he has to talk to them. Remember that when we went to Fumban, EMN Ndele was on that team. We recognized the fact that although they were part of the opposition, they were part of that team that went to Fumban. Everybody was represented. But the person who was the principal was John Wood Foncha. He was the one who sat to negotiate with La République. And the same will apply here. But if people want to join our camp with the intention that, no, we want to be part of La République, or we want to, then you may as well just move to La République and be part of their party when we're coming to the negotiating table. We will welcome other parties who want to be on our side to ensure that we have independence, separation. And therefore, it's the responsibility of the mediator to talk to all the parties. People have to understand this. They have to do that. It's not a Sako issue. It's not a Sako business here. He is the principal. It's thanks to Dr. Sako that we have the Swiss-led process. Let people understand this. Over to you, Paddy.
Now, you just said something there that brings the twist. You mentioned and acknowledged the fact that the Swiss um, facilitators could be talking to different parties. And we understand the dividedness that exists within and between these different factions for reasons we all know, and also for extraordinary reasons that they best know. There is a body that normally Amazonians presented in 2019, 2020 as a collaborative platform, and that's Team Act. Isn't it a problem from your perspective or from government perspective that in spite of the creation of these collaborative platforms to enhance talks, we could still have individual factions being consulted without this collective platform being a part of such discussions?
That's a very good point. And this is where education is critical. And that's why the interim government has decided to come out and start talking about what negotiations are and what are the processes, what are the steps to educate Amazonians. So there may be people who may be looking up to Bo Herbert or some other person, not actually knowing the role they have to play. It is not sufficient just to come out there and say, oh, we want to have our independence, and then you go behind the scene and then you are collaborating with La Republique. How can that work if you are not holding a totally different opinion? We have come to understand that a lot of the challenges that we have among Amazonians, even within the interim government, is all hinged on education. People not knowing or never taking the time to find out what the real issues are. And I really hope that with this meeting that will set up and bring experts, most of them will not even be Amazonians, to come and talk to us. Maybe they were able to take away that cloud of doubt. It is very important. And we believe, as the principal on this negotiating process, it is our role to educate everybody and let Amazonians understand this. We have to educate so that they know that we are serious about this independence. So I hope that people like Cho Ayaba and others, if they did not know how negotiations are done, you don't just simply go out there and say, no, we want to vote Dr. Sako out. He's no more longer the person as a principal. You really have to think about what you are doing. This is not a child's play.
And Dr. Mungo, I just want to cut you short right there because you just brought that up. I was about asking it, and I want to be specific about it. You first of all made a very strong statement, and you've done it a couple of times this evening. And you're saying that your government, the government you're a spokesperson for, the people's government, you're saying is the principal. Before you answer my next question, what gives you that guarantee? And that's some assurance that Amazonians need to know. You've seen some people go into a ghetto to do an election, and there is some pressure, or I would say some haste, of people trying to prove power so that they can be at forefront with negotiations.
Yes.
We understand that. So, amidst all the chaos that we've been through during the past 8 months, what gives you that confidence? Why will you continuously say audaciously that you are the principal?
Because the whole idea about looking for a facilitator and eventually a mediator was by Dr. Sacco and the interim government. He was the one who sought to get a facilitator who was eventually accepted by both parties and now is become our mediator, accepted by La République. It is very important to know this. It did not just fall from the sky. He actively sought and obtained it because of our domination on the ground, our domination by the ARFs as far as this revolution is concerned. We have the forces and we have stopped La République from running our country. And that's why he's the principal. These are the two protagonists who will sit on the table, not church leaders, not opinion holders. They may be part of the team. They are welcome to be part of the team. We actually encourage them to be part of the team. But the person who will be the person talking, who has the veto power, which means that if Dr. Sacco does not accept something, it will not go any further. That is the role that Dr. Sacco and the powers that he has as the principal on the IG side. He has a veto power. One Ambazonians to understand this. Again, it shows the importance of having these town hall meetings because you are going to have people who are far more experienced in negotiations than I. Starting with the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, Dr. Elat, who's been working tirelessly behind the scene to make sure that this Swiss-led process is on track. That's Dr. Elat. And he'll be talking. I'm sure most of you probably do not know him. He's one of the eloquent fighters that speakers who has worked tirelessly with the
Dr.
Swiss-led process
Mungwa,
over the past couple of years. Yeah.
I have a concern and a clarity which I think we need to make. Are you saying that even if situations change on the ground, this principal's position in this negotiating or negotiation process stays constant?
It's not about
Why do I say so? Why do I say so quickly? Why do I say so? You realize that people had political agenda last year and they wanted to discredit this person who was the dominant factor and who was the spearheader. They did so, it didn't work. They went ahead to create an outright distraction, which is now not only witnessed and felt by Amazonians, but even the international community has actually seen that there is distraction.
That is a hypothetical situation, and I'm not here to answer hypotheticals. But what I will encourage you to do is that just keep that thought with you. And when the experts come here next week, because my role here was just to give you an introduction and just the overview of what is going to take place. I would rather suggest that we ask them to specific experts who will give you the ins and outs of it. But you've seen, going back even to your question, at least to answer it indirectly, yes, people did everything to torpedo the process, at least give the impression to the international community that Dr. Sacco is not really the person at the helm. But what happened? In fact, his popularity has gone through the roof. Because there was a point, I mean, the early January, February, and March, there were issues because we really felt that we were down in the dumps. We were really, really frustrated. But we came back. We came back. And now we are in total control. So we all know what has happened to the coup plotters in terms of their popularity. And we've had all sort of sampling, okay, in all parts of Amazonia and even overseas. And we know exactly where we stand right now. So I'm talking with a lot of confidence because they've come to realize the type of person Dr. Sacco is. And one thing you should understand, all these deviations that took place was actually good for us. People have to understand this. It was really good for us. So in as much as people were upset, that's what made us become graduate from boys to men. We are now men in the interim government. You tell me, Compare this interim government with what obtained in January. You tell me personally, what do you feel? Do you feel happier or no? Look at the structure of the interim government and look at the way
Yes,
it's
I
working.
think like
These are the
someone
proofs.
described, the chaffs have been separated from the chiefs. Someone
Yeah,
made that statement, and you would realize that people more respectful, more collaborative, more determined are together working. I say it, and I say it over and over again, that Dr. Sacco went away with stakeholders, meaning those who are focused, those who have been funding struggle for Chris Anus and his people to steal, and coup plotters went with noisemakers. The Prince J cars making noise all over the place but not funding the struggle, and some scammers fabricating fake Mullah ADs and the others saying things that they cannot substantiate. I agree with you with that. And I think since you have chosen to talk and superficially when it comes to this principal factor of the Swiss-led negotiations, I would like us to make progress with our discussion, with your permission. We get back to something really vital. It has to do with the influence of forces of occupation on the ground and the ARFs. You are a spokesman for the interim government. Fellow Amazonians, you can see the number is already on your screen. We would like to start taking your contributions. I will be reading some of your comments on Facebook in a few minutes, and the SOS will be there for why to take your calls or to take your questions and give some responses. But real quickly, look at recent happenings. You've seen the politicians, demented Confucianists, failed politicians, Osi, Kamto, Frundi just a few days ago said it shamelessly that the leaders abroad, precisely in America, should be sent back home for prosecution. Nobody seems to be talking about the beheaders, the ISIS leaders in Norway. And you see, their energy is all centered in these United States of America. And then you see the papitos. I don't know if you know what papitos is. That's how
no, I
best you
don't.
describe him. I was just reading over social media, and I hear people calling him papitos, Mimi. Well, I'm talking about Joshua Osi, a failed politician, the man who has achieved the least in the SDF party over for over 30 years of their existence, comes up with a preposterous statement and suggests or makes a demand of the same thing his mentor did. We've also seen come to an interview on media television saying categorically, as though he is the determinant, that the Amazonian quest for freedom is not a discussion. I have an opinion on this, but as
Uh,
spokesperson, what do you have to say?
First of all, I am not surprised at the comments that you just narrated, whether it's Frundi or Osi or Kamto. Maybe let me start with somebody like Kamto. I think he has this illusion, like most Francophones, who think that, okay, because he's a so called professor, he's so smart. In terms of even professions, um, I don't know the risk that a professor does that can actually make you feel that, oh, this is somebody who is so remarkable. I mean, I can understand creativity in trying to solve societal problems. Uh, but when you have somebody like Professor Kamto, who uh, I don't think, I mean, let me not disparage him. I want to work with examples. This is the so called lawyer who was hired by La Republique to go and defend La Republique in the Court of Human Rights in Banjul against Ambazonia. Listen to this. He was the expert lawyer. And he went there. What did he say? His scholarship was that Northwest, the people there are part of Bamileke. Southwest, the people there are part of the dwellers. And to him, he thought that was a scholarly presentation. What happened to him? He lost against Dr. Ngumne. Okay? Who has a PhD in community development, not even in law. That is Maurice Kamto for you. So when I hear him say things like what you've just said, of course, that is what he tried to sell in Banjul, and they told him that no, Southern Cameroonians are a distinct people with a distinct history. Like everything Francophone, they are tone deaf. They never listen. And he knows that. Now, if he was a professor of some international repute, you may say that, okay, well, he learned in Banjul. But do you think he did? He did not. So that's all I want to say about this Mr. Kamto. He's no match for Southern Cameroonians because our facts, we will go with our facts and we will take it to the end. It is that simple. Maybe he has to review his notes, the one he took to Banjul. They came back in tatters. Shame. We defeated Kamto. Maybe somebody should remind him. Somebody should remind him. Can you imagine if they won in Banjul? We would have been gone a long time ago. But they lost. Every legal matter that we've had against La République, we have won. And that's why they have resorted to brutality, savagery, and envy. You can go tell Kamto that. I hope he's watching this program. So telling me that he's a professor is absolutely of no use to me. If he cannot even respect the rule of international law. So what type of lawyer is he? So he's more of a clandestine lawyer who was hired by La République. I think he will make a very good advisor to the coup plotters because they're very good at looking for lawyers of doubted repute. So that's not an issue. We'll remind him what happened to him, Banjul. Over to you.
Now, it is not about Kamto. You realize there's one section of this discussion of this that you just left out. It is about Kamto.
No, let me go. Okay, yes,
about,
sorry, it just
about
occurred to me. Let me continue. So yeah, so come to OC and the SDF. Oh my goodness, this is just a band of desperate people, and if they don't toe the line with CPDM, first, they're not going to have any of the privileges that they give them. It's all about survival. It's all about survival. First of all, if you want to, is there any treaty or any accord between La République and America in terms of extradition of, I don't know, other criminals or political? I don't know whether there's any such treaty between the two countries. Do they know that for that to happen, there must be
SOS,
some
please,
relationship?
as you speak, SOS, as you speak, do you want to just move a little bit backward, a little bit from your camera? Yeah, a little bit. Yes, that is much better now. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
That's amazing.
So
yes, that's amazing.
These people are so ignorant. Their politicians are yet, they don't even understand anything about international law. They have no idea about freedoms. They're absolutely clueless. You really begin to wonder. When I keep telling you that these people are just savages, you think I'm joking. That is the real word. What can OC support in terms of human rights? Maybe he should answer that question. What does he consider as human rights that he can fight for to make sure that it's implemented? What? I don't know whether, I mean, I don't have a legal background, but there are certain things that are just so logical. And he's giving orders to the United States. Can you imagine? I mean, it's almost childlike. It's like a baby who is crawling, challenging a heavyweight boxer. It's just it's laughable. I hope that they are sane. I don't know. It's just ridiculous. It just appears that in La République, anybody can say anything because they're afraid of either Biya or they're afraid of the French because they're all hoping that the French may support them so that they become the next head of state. I think that's what they're doing. So Kamto wants to appeal to the French that, listen, when I come here, I'm just going to toe the line like my predecessors have in the past. So he has no opinion of his own. He has no opinion. That's supposed to be a lawyer, an international lawyer. And he's still so clueless on fundamental issues. He may not like Ambazonia living, but he should have that honesty as an intellectual to tell the truth. Say, look, listen, I don't like Ambazonians living, but I think they have the right to do it. And I will see what else we can negotiate so that we can be good neighbors. If he says something like that, say, yeah, this guy, he has some reason, some mental capacity at least to think like a human being. But if he's saying that it's categorical that he will not accept us living, who is he? I don't want to use a word that you probably ban me
I
from
think
talking
as
here.
you just hit the nail where I wanted it, because you mentioned they are trying to seek for notice. When we're young, we say in school signal. So they're trying to seek for notice because these guys are all governors of France. Any president in a French colony is a governor of France. And Cameroon really has apologists, those who have chosen to be apologists in their life. They don't even want to take the position of Gbagbo. Now look at this. All of them are sending signals to France. I want to confirm on that. Okay, listen. If you make sure I become president, I will still maintain your interest. And this boils down to the same discussion of France and French opinion. Because all of what are these individuals saying? They are not talking to us Amazonians. They know that we have been emancipated. They know that we have been freed mentally. They are very well aware of that. But this is what they want to tell France. Listen to me. If this man dies today and you make sure I'm there, come on. I will maintain your interest.
Yeah,
Also, as well.
absolutely. And it's all about money and power and corruption. That has been the modus operandi of French politicians. Now they've sucked in the SDF and Frundi. They say, after all, let me have mine. What can I do? I've given up. And that's why we Ambazonians, we know the importance of our country to our the future generations, and that's why we are fighting. You probably would have expected that maybe some of the La Republique citizens here in America, they may try to push to have a similar effect uh, in their country, but they are not doing it. But they sit back and complain behind the scene. They always want some misguided Ambazonian to go and make changes, so they will come and then take over. You will be surprised how many La Republic citizens will want to migrate to Ambazonia when we have sovereignty. I can assure you that they will want to empty their cities and come and be with us. These same people. These same people. One day we'll talk about it again. But they are so spineless. They are so spineless. They cannot raise a finger.
Fellow
They should be
Amazonians, ladies and
fighting to change.
gentlemen.
Look, La Republique can decide to adopt English. It has nothing to do with us. We don't own the English language. They can decide to say, okay, we get rid of these people. Let us all be French speakers. It would take them a while to actually, get the culture right. But they can do that. What prevents them?
Mhm.
Why would they want to send their kids to our schools? They can build English-speaking schools in their part of the country, train francophones who can speak English. They have let them do it. Why would they come to us? I mean, when I think about the whole scenario, it just we kind of is inexplicable.
And one would have thought that perhaps they're doing so out of a good purpose, but it was a viciousness to engulf a people. That's what I thought.
Yes, pardon. What did you? I didn't get it.
The idea of trying to get our schools or trying to infiltrate our schools, one would think it was some sense of brotherliness, but it was a calculated agenda to stay hegemony.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that was a calculated agenda. And now we are seeing the plan unfold. I
Wow.
remember I have and I once met a colleague, working here, who was obviously francophone from everything about her, and they were asking her, "Okay, well, your country has the English and speaking part. What are you?" And she told me, she said to that person, "Oh, I'm Anglophone." I said, "What? Really?" Now, when I look back, I can understand because she can speak English, obviously. So it is that narrative that they've been taken along that there is no Anglophone problem. Of course, when she speaks, it's distinctly a Francophone accent,
Yes.
distinctly Francophone. Even Americans know that she speaks with a Francophone accent. We say, I'm Anglophone. It's like me saying that I'm Francophone because I lived and studied in France. Of course, I cannot be. How can I be? Okay. So you're absolutely right by making that statement.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Fellow
Yeah.
Amazonians, we're making huge progress with this discussion. SOS out. I'm just going through the comments, and I must tell you that I'm actually enjoying them so well. Amazonians are saying, making so beautiful comments here. Someone says it's a pity. Joshua says just seeking for notice. Somebody say great. Patriotic salute to ABC Amber TV, the SOS of Communications and of the IG, Dr. Martin Mungwa, and the infatigable president, a comment. Amazing there. Okay, we have the phone lines open and we're gonna the SOS. I don't know for how long he's gonna be here, but we still have some
No,
minutes
I'm
to be
here.
here
I
and
have time today. I have time.
Yes, yes. So we will be having this discussion, and so you can call in and ask your questions on the subject of discussion for today. Perhaps I didn't do well by trying to crack into the SOS minds to say some things beforehand, and you can also call in um, to find out more about the Swiss negotiations. And just to remind you, on Thursday, the president is having a very special town hall. You heard Nijo earlier on telling the peoples of Amazonia that it is not going to be business as usual. Categoric things will be discussed come Thursday. So we're looking forward to you making this happen. Yes, SOS, we're back
Mr.
on this
But yes,
panel,
just
and
to
it's
add
quite
on to
important. Go ahead.
Friday's program, I understand. I hope you're aware of this because of the change in schedule. You guys may not have the news on Friday because we have this talk that the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, Dr. Ellard, will be talking about. Giving you the broad, story or overview of negotiations and what is specific to Amazonia, as well as the town hall. Are you aware that we may not have the news on Friday? Is that okay? Are you aware of this because of this change in program?
Yeah, hello. We have a caller. Yes, caller, go right ahead.
Yes, greetings, Paddy. I want to thank you for all you do. As always, I will never get tired of saying so because I've never seen signs of you getting tired of doing what you do. And I also say to SOS, Dr. Mungwa, thank you for showing up every day prepared, and we will never get listening to you because each time you come, you are like an encyclopedia. So today I don't have a question, but I just have a comment. When you listen to Mr. Joshua C. and Mr. Campbell, you come to one conclusion. We Amazonians were right to run away from that stinking place because it is very obvious listening to these individuals speak that is not they don't reside in a country of law. You know, they don't even know what human rights are, and so they cannot protect our rights and our interests because they don't know what it is. You know, if they do, they are hypocrites because there's no way Mr. Kamto can pretend that he doesn't know that southern Cameroon and Amazonia attempted to form a union with La Republic of Cameroon. We came in there as southern Cameroon. We came in there as a country. We did not come in there as Nozo, as he refers to us. We did not come in there as some regions of La Republic of Cameroon. La Republic of Cameroon obtained independence on January 1, 1960. Independence date that today they're running away from. And us, Amazonia, you know, in 1961, October. And so he cannot say that we are one and indivisible based on what? And is there a treaty of union? No. You know, so they're basing this on what? So there's only one conclusion. These individuals are hypocrites. And so this reinforces our desire to go away, you know, to run away from them as much as we could. As a matter of fact, if we have a way of creating a wall of Jericho between us and them, I think we would, because they are not one.
We don't have the news on Friday
at all.
We have
because of their hypocrisy. And so that's just a little bit I wanted to contribute today. Thank you for allowing me to speak, more or less to vent my frustration at people who know but act like they don't, or people who don't know, they act like they've been to school. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. SOS.
Oh yeah, I mean, Mayor Kerry, I'm happy that he used this platform to vent his frustration. I think that's exactly what I believe more than 95% of Amazonians are feeling, probably with the exception of all those, how do I call them? We used to call
House
them
slaves.
bootlickers. Who are on La Republique side simply because they give them a paycheck and they're ready to sell anything they have. Absolutely correct. I mean, at this point, you don't even know what La Republique will consider as a legal thing. Nothing is legal. People just say what they want, even against all the evidence that they have. And it has gone as far as a professor who is considered as one of the best minds in the country. I would like to see him come and say, okay, these are the rights that Amazonians have, and I think they can exploit it. And these are the rights that I believe they cannot. I would want a person like him to actually talk. He thinks that when he goes on stage and he brings a few Bamileke Anglophones who speak English even better than I do, that is somehow going to entice us. As I told you, that lady speaking that English has no Anglo-Saxon culture. It is not in her. It's like teaching a parrot how to say a few words. Because if she were, she would turn and tell them that, listen, there are certain rights that is all part of Amazonia that they grew up with that you cannot, they are invariants, as we call them in mathematics. You can never change them, no matter what you do. You can turn them upside down, those values are still there and they will stick to these values. I want those who speak English with Camto, probably explain that to him in French. Because I just get the feeling that there's a communication lapse a gap between all those Anglophones around him and Mr. Camto himself. They need to, if they are true Anglophones, or if they can really teach him something, if they really understand our culture, they should lecture him. Okay, they should lecture him so that he doesn't embarrass himself, because when he makes statements like that in front of Ambazonians, we write him off. He's of absolute no value to us, no value. And I think he should be told this. He's of no value.
Thank you very much. We have a caller from the UK, please. The floor is yours.
Hi, Paddy. I just want to say a very big thank you for the wonderful job you are doing. Secretary Mungwa, kudos and make Hula Holland strong. Actually, one thing pricked me when you narrated this story of a francophone or let me say that a public citizen claiming to be Anglophone. So it's not going to be a question, it's going to be a comment, and I like to twist something into a question, just ask you one little question, which is going to be maybe pretty, I don't know how to put it, but I'll ask it. You are the boss, you're going to put in what you can put. All right, the thing, the comment I was going to make about the Francophones posing to be Anglophones or things, having taught in the Cameroons, in the southern Cameroons, this is my observation. Our best schools are invaded by these people. What they do, I noticed, was they would bring in their children just to get the rubrics of the English language, and they fly them over to America, they fly them over to the UK. That is a fact. Living in the UK, one thing I observe is that you almost have more La Republic citizens than our own citizens. With issues coming up with within the rubrics on the realm of this genocide that is going on, you have many more of the vicious vermin trying to take advantage of this to get footings in not just English-speaking countries, but every other country in the world. That is my comment. One thing that boggles my mind, Secretary of State, is the issue post-independence, what to actually do with these vermins that are crawling and contaminating our land, and that we want to invade our land, the frogs. Post-independence, anything envisaged about safeguards of our people? I just heard one person talking of a new invasion of them into our lands post-independence. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for taking too long.
Thank you.
Good question. The fact of the matter is that no matter what we do, it's very difficult to make the borders impenetrable. And I cannot say here that when we have independence, it will be impossible for citizens of La Republique to come over. But what I think I can say is that we can regulate it, even make it legal. But there may be some very tough conditions to fill. There may be very tough conditions to fill. And if they meet those conditions, yes, they will be admitted into Amazonia. I can't say that we will never interact with La Republique citizens. Remember, we are civilized people. We are not afraid of foreigners. We are not afraid of people who have different opinions. In fact, we believe that by interacting with them, we actually build our systems and we become more and more robust as a country. So in terms of technology, in terms of science, in terms of skilled trades, yeah, why not? So, I mean, let me just leave it there. But I think the question is that it is possible that we'll regulate it. We can't just say that we'll never ever interact with people from French Cameroon. We cannot say that. It may actually be an opportunity for them to admire our system, and then they can go back to their homes and make a change and improve on their way they are being governed. I mean, most of us are doing this because we had the good fortune to study in the States or in Britain or in Canada, or some of these great Anglo-Saxon countries where the human rights and the rule of law and the respect of the human being is of priority. So we've absorbed that and we want to implement it. And again, remember, revolutions happen because people learn something new and realize that what they're in needs to be changed. So just like after the war, after the First World War, when Africans went to Europe and discovered that the white man had the same red blood and they were all equally as afraid as they came and said, to hell with this colonialism. We want to be free. So the same thing happens over time. That's how civilization, changes, and people look for new ways to manage their countries, or where they came from. So that's what it is, and we are going to do the same. At least for us, we are cognizant of the fact that change is inevitable. That's one thing people have to understand. But progress is optional. You can change and you may not progress. And that's exactly what is happening in La Republique. There is change in La Republique, but there's no progress. One day, beer will no longer be there. One day, Frundi will not be there. One day, Caviar again will not be there. But if they are not set to progress, they will still be in the dumps. But we, Ambazonians, we want progress. So we accept both change, which is inevitable, but at the same time, we accept progress to move forward. Because tomorrow, I may not be the Secretary of State, but that's not my problem. It doesn't matter to me. I really hope that a better Secretary of State for communication will come in and do a better job than I did. That is called progress.
Well, that's amazing talk right there. We have a caller calling from the home front. Caller, go right ahead.
Okay, Mr. Paddy, good evening, and thanks for the good work you've been. More grease to your elbows.
Thank you.
I wish just to appreciate our SOS of communication for the intelligence that is delivering to us now. As it just goes straight to my point, one point I want to emphasize on is as for the ideas which our Secretary of State is saying that we shall have some dealings with francophones. If we see for 61 years that the French have invaded Africa, and we are uprooting them now, then hoping that we will trade with them again in our own region, of which they have given us a lot of trouble. We think if some of you were with us in the ground zero here, and you see the maltreatment that they are treating us, it would take us the good gods, to forgive what they are doing with us. But whatever the case, we know we are very intelligent and very smart. We'll handle the things in the way that God will give us more intelligence to do with them. Then one point out of this, I wish the Secretary to know from the Secretary of State that those embezzlers who have embezzled our funds to disturb us from achieving this success, of which some of you are very serious working on it, I wish that all LGA should come out with records of embezzlers, so that they should put them in records, so that it will help us to give us more energy, because I know the energy of this struggle is money, and the coup protest leaders went as far as having threats to cut down money from us through their various partners. This point should be taken very serious so that when they're judging their headmaster, Cristiano, then all the school boys should be included. Thanks for good work.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, I mean, the gentleman from the home front, I really share everything you said. I mean, when I said that we are going to deal with La Republic citizens, it didn't mean that we're going to just open the floodgates so anybody can come in. I just said that it's a matter of caution, and I'm just being practical. It's impossible to seal a border that nobody crosses. Um, and instead of doing that, again, I don't even want to go into that because we are far from getting to that point where we just say we have laws for people who are non-citizens. If maybe you feel more comfortable that way, and we group them. But of course, in those laws, if somebody has to be from La Republique, there will be a further law for them or something, you know. But I'm not here for that sort of discourse. That's still far down the line. But in terms of the coup plotters, I'm making sure that we have documented proof of their acts. ABC, I mean, all these programs are recorded. So it will not be difficult for us to go back and look at these programs and have all the facts. So everything's recorded. I want to assure him that, yes, anything that's done by the coup plotters in terms of whatever they embezzled and so on, we have good documentation. And I believe that when the time comes, it wouldn't be an issue to access the documentations for whatever purpose we want to use them for. So that rest assured. Again, we're a society of laws, and we I don't want to be the judge and the executioner right now. I can't. These are areas that I am not an expert in. I'm just a spokesperson for the government. But what I can assure you is that we are going to have institutions that will deal with
You're
this.
not just a
It's not my
spokesperson for the
opinion. Maybe what
government.
I'm saying, I may be wrong.
You,
You may have
you are not
a
SOS. You're not just a spokesperson for the government. You are the spokesperson for the government. There's some
I
interesting
say,
comments coming
well,
in here for. There are interesting
we
comments
obviously
coming in
we are
from
going to
Facebook.
have the legal branch, and they will look into all that. And what I'm
Yeah.
saying, I'm not a legal expert, but I would hope that we'll have instruments to address issues of that nature. So I can't even be making pronouncements. Those are very personal, and I hope I'm not breaching, the interim government by by
Yes.
by
So
making such a
I
statement. If
just
that's the
wanted to
case,
read
then
that there are
I
some
will withdraw
interesting
them.
comments on Facebook. We have Nelson Ochiba on Facebook saying that post independence we will draft a nationality law for Amazonia based on our tribe. Those who settled before 1984. You know, he always has very strong opinion. You're very intelligent, SOS, like unlike Chris Anos, who just occupied space and had no mass. Okay, greetings to this great team. Thank you very much, caller. That is what I had in mind to suggest in the town hall on Thursday. Okay, Amazonians are already beefing up for the town hall. I can see here that the chief of staff has already started distributing the link for the town hall, which we'll be putting on the comment section right now. What do you think about the Amazonian law and settlement that has to do with people? Ochiba
Yeah, I
is
mean, there will
suggesting
be a nationality law.
that
Yes,
it will
that's
have
for
to be
sure.
people that settled 1984.
I don't
That means
know
a lot
where
of Amazonians for today will
I don't
just
know
not
where
be.
we'll have a cutout or whatever. I don't know.
That will be determined at that time.
Yes, that's definitely not my area of expertise. I don't know.
That's amazing. Amazing. So the comments are coming. I'm just some have just passed. I can't get them. But let me try to see if I can. Okay. Okay. She mind blowing report from the SOS says congratulations to the die-hard members of our interim government, devoted activists, and most important, our indomitable president Samuel Ekomesako, who withstood and defeated the coup plotters. Okay, that's from Milichi. Patriotic salute. Okay, this is a protest without policy is just a pride. We are not here for a moment now. It has changed to a movement. Amazonia must be free. That's great. Wow. So somebody's asking, please talk to about the ban on number plates in Amazonia. Yes, we have the ISIS terrorist gang headed by Joe Ayaba saying that everyone with a SEMAC number plate is a ban by Joe Ayaba, and we understand that Lele Afrik has countered it. As well as talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, I think that's what I mean. We've read that in the in on social media about Choyaba banning Semak numbers, and I'm not sure that we have a maybe a particular policy on that yet. We have remember that this fight
No, no, no. SOS,
we
before you
have
go
the
for before you make progress, SOS, a moment. Don't you think that the silence of the interim government by default is acceptance of it?
well. I mean, you well, not necessarily. At the same time, it does not mean that every single issue that is raised and especially talked about, we must have to come as if we are challenging uh, our leading role in Ground Zero. Again, what I wanted to say is that there's a hierarchy of issues that we address. Some people who may not have the power we do may go on little things to do, talk about them, but we have a hierarchy of issues. And I think I've talked about that hierarchy of issues. Because of the resources that we have, we can't just come out now, every little thing will throw our snowballs at. No, we have the hierarchy. When we have to talk about safety, we talk about operational efficiency, and we talk about customer issues. These are high on the agenda. Safety of the restoration forces, operational excellence, making sure that we prepare them for the little battles or the big battles that we have with La Republique. From time to time, we may also address those little issues, but I don't think that there will be people will be against the interim government simply because Choa Yaba has talked about number of places and we have not. We don't play that type of a game. Uh, on the on the major issues, I don't think that even Choa Yaba compares with us. He's totally insignificant. It's totally insignificant. I'm not here to be fighting with Choa Yaba. When I do that, it appears we are actually at the same level. We are not. We look at the priority issues, targets, dealing directly with La Republique, and so on and so forth. And in the course of that, we can even address the number plate issue indirectly, because most of these people who are bringing these cars with these number plates are the military or the francophones. So there's so many ways that we address issues, but we stack it and we see which ones are priorities. And again, I told you we have safety, operational excellence, and then how we deal with our own fellow countrymen, who mean Ambazonians, because these are our customers. I hope I make it very clear to you. So we have a very complex algorithm that we use in order to determine what we need to do at any time.
That's amazing. I think we will we'll ponder a little bit on this right now and end our discussion for tonight here. This is the point, Secretary Mungwa. Don't you think, because the SEMAP is money of is extortion from our people, don't you think it's high time we escalate the ban of certain things that are SEMAC? Because SEMAC is a fraud. SEMAC was calculated and constructed to usurp or to engulf the what they call the Anglophone minority in the entire Central Africa. It was
Right.
structured. It was a geopolitical fraud. That is after the northwest southwest dichotomy was already failing. Excuse me, please. Now, CEMAC inclusive, we banned brasseries drinks, but they are coming in. In fact, we have received reports from the ground that there are some parts where people are getting and others are protesting that if we cannot help to ban it, then we should just let everyone enjoy it. I think, don't you think it's high time the interim government escalates in their strategic plan on the ground to see how some of these things can be restricted? Thank you, please.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That you're absolutely correct. And I wish in some of the strategic meetings that we have, we're going to invite you. When I say we have a complex algorithm, one of the things that I try not to do when I come here to talk to Ambazonians is to let the cat out of the bag. There are certain issues that when it is something very sensitive and very dangerous, or sorry, not dangerous, something of very high value, I am always very reluctant to give a hint. I don't think it is important for me to come here and lay down exactly what we are doing behind the scene. In that case, I don't think it's even necessary that every single question that you ask, I must give you the answer all the way to the nitty-gritty. The interim government works on a very complex algorithm, and we factor in all those aspects that you mentioned because we know the root causes why La Republique is behaving the way it is. And remember that the ultimate goal is to extract ourselves out of this SAMAC issue. So it is not unrelated to funding our ARFs and identifying the targets that we have to deal with. We cannot all separate everything into different compartments. There are certain things that we mold them together in order to address them as part of the whole. I want you to understand this. We understand the meaning of SAMAC, and it's actually at the fore of this fight that we are on. That is the best I can tell you. Part of it is actually, is part of the defense group. So I cannot come here and just divulge everything that I know. I don't think that's the intent. Okay. I hope.
SOS, I think that the response you have given is actually what was needed. And I must say that you were smart enough to give it the way that will satisfy myself and even those who are concerned. The concern here is just to be sure that, like I have advised the interim government, especially when it has to do with lockdowns and some other things. My own advice is we should not just give another or a counter because the other person gives it. Perhaps the person is giving it for an ulterior motive, but we should look at the advantage for Amazonia, and because it's childish. You find Anus loves this. Like, okay, this person has done this, let me just do the other one without looking at the rationale and the possibility on the ground. Because right now, things are fast changing on the ground and we are taking the lead. We should take the lead in our maturity of seeing something. So I appreciate your response, which I think somebody might be scoring their poll. We believe that he's working for the oppressor or for the colonizer, and he might just be scoring in their poll. So we take advantage of it and master on it, which that's what I deeply appreciate. Right now, I like us to make progress in conclusion by you giving a review and your closing remark. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Ambazonians. Once again, I'm here to talk about our movement and to assure you that the interim government's eye is actually on the price, and that price is total and complete independence for Southern Cameroons. And we know, and I'm happy to say this, that from all the sampling or that we've done at the home front and elsewhere, and I think Ambazonians are beginning to understand exactly the role that the interim government is playing towards our sovereignty and independence. Today, I talked to you about the root causes, how these problems came into being, how La République has manipulated the facts about our sovereignty, and why we need a negotiated settlement. It's not just bringing a bunch of so-called leaders from abroad and they're sitting on somewhere in Yaoundé for a week They talk about things that they've already planned ahead of time, and then you just sign papers, and then they will just announce it that the problem is over. It goes deeper than that. When we have to separate, there are lots of issues that we have to look into. There are lots of issues that we have to look into. But even more important, Ambazonians must know the steps, must know how long it would take, must know which are the different parts of this negotiation that we need to know about, so that you stay home and you are confident that we are doing the right thing. Somebody tells you that, oh, we just want to remove Sako and then go and meet La Republique in Yaoundé and sign a deal. Can you imagine the danger in that? If anybody tells you that they want to go to Yaoundé and negotiate with La Republique, we are doomed. And we, in the internal government, we cannot accept. So once again, I come in front of you. We are very confident in what we're doing because we have confidence in the ARFs, because they are doing a remarkable job back home to defend us. And we will continue to improve militarily. We will continue to improve on the diplomatic front so that we can have a settlement, a negotiated settlement. And don't be afraid and don't be surprised that La Republique is all talking about, oh, we will never accept anything short of one Cameroon. That should not push you. That should not change your opinion. One day, you'll be surprised what will happen. They will all agree and we'll have the negotiated settlement and we'll go back to Ambazonia. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Good night.
Yes, fellow Amazonians, ladies and gentlemen, that was the state of the liberation with Dr. Martin Mungwa, Secretary of State for Communications and IT. And we had an intensive, exclusive discussion on very topical issues. We discussed elaborately on France and French opinion in Amazonia, what Amazonians need to know as we look forward to a negotiated settlement. And then we expanded on different areas that are of critical concern. And I believe that after tonight, you've gotten some of your responses. I want to take this opportunity for those who are still watching and who are watching us. It's close to midnight in Amazonia. Those who are watching in Mutengen, in Bakingili, in Abakwatan, those who are watching in Manfe, in Bali, in Kendem, in Bui, I want to say congratulations to you all. Thank you. Congratulations to your resilient Amazonians in spite of oppression. Like Dr. Tita said yesterday, you're determined to live, you want to live. You're fighting with your every might to make sure that your story is heard. You're fighting with your entire being to make sure that we translate it to the next generation, something better than we inherited. Thank you, board members, club members of ABC Amber TV, for your selflessness and relentless donations. Thank you for making it happen on ABC Amber TV, for giving ABC Amber TV your all. Thank you to all stakeholders for redeeming your pledges. Thank you to all interim government volunteers who are making sure that amidst the chaos, amidst infiltrators, blackmailers, we are making progress and serving our people during this very critical time. And finally, I want to extend a very special thanks to our brothers and sisters who have mounted the courage to pick up arms during this very critical time against the forces of occupation who are determined to annihilate, to eradicate, to kill, to maim. In this dark day, we have chosen to fight. Thank you. Until next time, it has been Tapa the King. Bye-bye and good night.
That they so desperately need to bleed the enemy.
The number one most important thing for every Ambazonian to do right now is to draft. Draft and draft and draft. People of Ambazonia, draft.
Why the war draft is a must now. Fellow Ambazonians, after 5 years of relentlessly fighting for the liberation of our homeland from the genocidal occupation of French Cameroon, it's very important that we remember